Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. And I'm really excited for today's guest. He's coming from Michigan, but he really embodies the concept of time, location, emotional, financial freedom. His name is Rodric Lenhart. He's a ICF certified business coach. He's also founder of Million Dollar Flip Flops. We're going to talk all about entrepreneurship, why quitting is for winners, which is really interesting, embracing change, and serial entrepreneurship. So, Rodric, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I love the pod match because you get such a different variety and really vetted guests. Tell people about your story and what you do, and we'll get started.
Yeah. So, man, how do you encompass a lifetime into 2 minutes, right? Like that's when I was writing the book, and they say write the back page cover. I'm like, how do I do that? It's 50,000 words.
Yeah.
Lifelong entrepreneur, born and raised in Michigan. I'm actually here at my dad's, so that's why I'm in a garage as we speak. I graduated from University of Toledo and left for the Carolinas, and I was there for about 15 years and sold my last business in June of last year, so just over a year ago, and bought a place with a 2,000 acre view in the mountains where I don't see a person or a plane or hear a siren for weeks at a time if I choose. So that's where I'm at now. So we spend most of our time there, and then the rest of the time we spend about 6 months of the year traveling the world. So
I know you and your family just got back from a vacation in Hawaii, and that's the ultimate freedom, is being able to choose. One thing is talking about your story in 2 minutes, but you also have 25 years of triumph and defeat in the trenches. So kind of tell us the confessions of a serial entrepreneur.
No, right. I started with basically nothing. We grew up in a little one-bedroom house, and I was that kid who was finding every way to get money for baseball cards and go down to the convenience store, buy unhealthy things for me. And it all started when I was really young, 7, 8 years old. I made a deal with the guy on top of the hill to sell fruits and vegetables in my front yard, and I figured out, hey, if I can talk to people, I can order pizzas and save up for a Nintendo. And that's where it all started. And fast forward 40 years later, I'm semi-retired, and I've had inventions and businesses, construction and real estate. And I mean, just name what it is, but I just always knew I never wanted to work for anybody. And if you dive deep on my core values, freedom, autonomy are right at the top. And I've made less money in my lifetime so I could do the things I wanted. I think that's really the goal we're all after. We're not after the money. We're after the time that money can buy us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And basically society kind of pigeonholes us into, I was reading this great book. It's talking about time versus money. And it's basically, we spend our 20s all the way to 60s working for, basically it's paper and ink. And, we sacrifice our health and family for, basically not something that's really worthless. And basically what you're talking about is converting money into time. And so the ones that figure it out early, such as yourself. The other thing is, I love this idea. People always say never quit, or winners never quit, but you say winners always quit. So tell us about that idea.
I think you're starting to hear it more now with fail fast or fall forward. There's all these kind of cliche terms that are bouncing around now. But if you look at the people and this is 100% what the book is about, it's what I coach other small business owners about. It's if something's not working, you cut your losses, you go to the next thing. Every great in every field does that. Look at Michael Jordan. If something's not working, he finds a new way to make it work. He doesn't just keep trying that same thing again. It's not working. So yeah, I think, similar to that, trying to buy our health, later by working when we're 20 to 60 and hoping we have time. It's the same concept. We've just never been taught any of these things. So, but there's a few thought leaders out there trying to spread the word, right?
Yeah, especially because in the past, it was kind of like you stuck to it and basically, you pummel through it. But now it's kind of with this more of a startup mentality. Basically you fail faster, and the more iterations, the more reps you do, the faster you get to where you want to go, which is kind of a mind shift for a lot of people. There's
Absolutely.
Yeah. how do you like, quitting, but there's this fine balance between sticking to something and then basically finally realizing that you've learned all you can, or basically cutting your losses and then moving on. How do you find that fine balance?
In the book, I bring up Seth Godin's book, The Dip, which I'm sure you've read. The Dip, and it's that moment where, do I keep going or do I cut my losses? And you don't want to quit just because it's hard. You want to have a system in place that identifies that. And the work we do, what the book's about, if you go to my website, et cetera, I have a system I call the waves method, and it's something I've used my whole life. And when you take every decision you're going to make, including a decision, hey, I'm thinking about quitting this business, does that make sense? How do most people make decisions? They have like a crappy pros and cons list. They talk to their buddy at the bar. I always say the people closest to you do not have your best interest, and that's 1,000% true, and not for the reasons you think, right? And that's what the waves method does. It starts with your why. And by the way, I really loved your episode with was it Paul Williams Davis? Like his take on your why was super intriguing. But anyway, so it starts with your why, but then it goes through authenticity. And the reason that's chapter 2 in the book and part 2 of the waves method is you have to be 100% honest with yourself. You can't be doing things for your neighbor or your pastor or your family or your wife. It's okay to be selfish right there. Then you build out your core values over time. And that's what exploration is. And finally, you build a statement of purpose. So in your example, if I'm thinking, hey, should I start this business or should I quit this business? It goes through that filter, right? It starts, does this meet my why as I have it right now? Does it hit every one of my core values? And then ultimately, if I do X thing, does it fit Y statement of purpose? And if it doesn't, it's a no. I mean, it just makes decisions systematic and easy versus kind of happenstance. I'll see if it works, and then 40 years go by.
That's funny. It brings up so many important, powerful points. The next thing is talking about embracing change, because again, we evolved from like hunter gatherers, and we had to hunt for food, we had to fight for shelter, and now we have all of that. And now things such as, pandemics or market corrections, recessions, that's kind of what we have to deal with. AI, that's nothing compared to what our ancestors. But talk about embracing change in the ultimate sewer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with the quitting is for winners. I mean, it's when you have a system to know that a decision you're going to make is right, then change is easy and you look forward to it because it's not unknown anymore. You've ran it through some kind of parameters, that are built from your life and your experience. And that's why it's a superpower, because, I had a thriving construction business. We were doing multiple millions of dollars a year, and I was absolutely miserable. And I quit that business because here's my 2 options, and I run it through the filter, and that's what made the most sense. And people think you're crazy. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It's your life. Just let's put some systems in place that make every decision the right one. And then, the book Man's Search for Meaning. I know I heard Paul bring that up, and then also the Tolstoy book, Death of Ivan Illich. I don't know if you're familiar, but he's on his deathbed at the end, and he looks up at his wife and he says, "What if my whole life was wrong?" Like, can you think of a more terrifying thing than that? And we don't want to be 50, 60, 70 years old when we start asking that question. We want to ask it now.
One, along those lines, I think it was a book called The Top Regrets of the Dying. And one of them is, one of them is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And just like, because they realize, what are they working for? And it's kind of like this, society and the system that's designed to like kind of pump you and make you work and like consume more, and all it's like this, and people never really question that and go into like reframe it where they're building it based on what they want. One thing is now you're doing a service first business, and then you have sending 1 million kids abroad. And this, traveling the globe has affected your outlook on life and business. Tell us about Inspired building a business that donates 100% of its profits to charity.
Yeah. So, I sold my business last June and have things kind of like you kind of set up where if I don't want to work, I don't really have to work. And what do you do now? You work harder than you ever did, right? Because you're doing something you love. So when we designed this business, if you come through our program or you buy the book, my book launches September 12th. It's called $1 Million Flip Flops. You buy the book, you buy a course, you do any of the things we offer top end of the business, 100% of that is donated to our foundation. And our foundation is called Send a Student Leader Abroad. We are in partnership with EF Tours. If you're familiar with them, they're a global $7 billion global company. But think like middle school kids that go to Europe, My mom, when I was 13, we grew up with no money. And my mom spent money she didn't have to send me on that same trip. And when you're a 13-year-old that grew up in a small town in Michigan and suddenly you're in Paris and Pisa and London, and it changes your worldview. So I like to say there's no them, there's only us, right? And until you've left your cocoon and left this country in particular, you don't recognize that. So we want to provide that same opportunity for 1 million kids in my lifetime. So that's my legacy project. So everything we do in the business is donated to EF. Or donated to Send a Student Leader Abroad, which ultimately goes to EF. So kids from schools can apply. It's a matching grant. So we work with them week after week to help them earn money. And then ultimately we'll pay for their trip. So if they can't afford to go, but they are a student leader, they can apply and we give them the grant. So it's kind of a different way of running the business, right? So we go out, we speak at schools, we're going to the Global Summit for EF, and they say, hey, what does this guy do? Who is this Rodric fella? And then they come to the website and then they get engaged in our world. We make more money. We donate more money. We send more kids. So it's kind of a different wheel of business.
Yeah. The other thing is, giving back, and then also talking about mentoring and, bringing those people. But you have this idea of this difference between coaching and mentorship. And I know you are also a, certified coach as well. So kind of highlight those distinctions for the audience.
Yeah. So I went to Brown for my ICF, their LPCC program, which is, absolutely phenomenal. I tout it unabashedly worldwide, and it's not like I make any money, but it was such an amazing experience. And what I would have gotten wrong going into a program like that is people have come to me for 20 years because they see the businesses I start. They see me traveling the globe half the year. Man, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? Right. I tell them how I do it. It's not that complicated. But that's being a mentor, right? A coach, we say in the business, the client is creative, resourceful, and whole. I'm not a doctor, Chris, but I can come to you and just by asking powerful questions and actually listening, which most people don't do, I can help you in your business. That's a coach. It's more generalized. It's less specific. So a consultant comes in and says, I've ran a construction company or a real estate firm. Here's how we're going to set up your business. That's not what a coach does. A coach helps you discover the answers you already know.
I love that. And these days, Tiger Woods, Michael, all these, Kobe, they all had coaches even so it's always refining some aspect of their game. The other question that, as we're kind of closing is, you took this leap and then you're now doing, great work. Kind of closing is, you went from 0 to 1 million to 0 and back. And what's been the biggest lesson for you?
The biggest lesson in that journey, which I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs have been through that journey, is that here's the analogy. They say if you took every dollar in the world and you put it in a plane and you spread it out equally across the globe, it would be back in the same hands of the same people that had all the money within 10 years. So it doesn't matter if it's evenly distributed. Once you understand the principles and you understand what you want as a person, that's success. The money comes and goes. It doesn't matter. I've lived the life I've wanted to live. I have zero regrets, zero. If I die tomorrow, I had a great run, and that's what I've always wanted to be able to say. So that's success for me.
Yeah, I love that. And then, I think the kind of the key takeaway is what you're talking about is, regret. And, why do you live by the quote, the cost of anything is the amount of life you exchange for? That's very powerful.
Yeah, that's a Thoreau quote, right? Love me some Thoreau and everything. I've had that. If you remember MySpace, that was my quote on MySpace. It's my quote on Facebook. It's on LinkedIn. I put it everywhere. And that's my own reminder and the reminder to others that, especially in the world we live in where people are hourly employees, or even in our world where we're entrepreneurs, whatever decision we make, the cost of that thing is how many hours is it going to take me, right? So a car payment isn't $400 a month. If you only make $30, $40 an hour, let's say, that's That's 10 hours of my life per month to have that car. So what's your time worth? It goes back to that time freedom and valuing time above all other things.
Yeah, it's really it's you're talking about, time is the ultimate asset and it's the only scarce resource. Again, there's this book, it's called Rock Retirement, but it's talking about money is infinite because it's based on value and it's exchange. So and then value of your time and how long it would take to pay for services and goods. Really interesting. How can people contact you, follow you, reach out to you, see your work?
Yeah, so every channel it's at $1 Million flip flops, and that is because that is my chosen footwear. I do not wear foot cages ever, and also it represents change, right? $1 Million flip flop change, and then $1millionflipflops.com, and then you can also go to Sasla, like salsa, but sasla.org, and that's the foundation.
Yeah. And I love that. And when I was living in Hawaii, I loved all I did was wear flip-flops and sandals and swimming trunks. So
Yeah.
and all for the audience out there, all of resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, buddy. This was great.